What if the land you call home was also claimed by your neighbor? Welcome to the Israel-Palestine conflict, a complex and controversial issue that has spanned over a century. Picture a region, a small piece of land nestled in the eastern Mediterranean, a place where history and religion intertwine, a sacred ground for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. This is the stage for the Israel-Palestine conflict, a territorial dispute that has been the root of countless struggles, wars, and human tragedies. This land holds a profound historical significance for both Jews and Arabs. For Jews, it is the biblical land of Israel, the Promised Land, the place of King David's conquest and the reign of Herod the Great. It is where their ancient temples stood and where they yearned to return after enduring centuries of diaspora and persecution. On the other hand, for Arabs, it is Palestine, their ancestral home where they have cultivated the land and built a society over centuries. It is where they seek national sovereignty and the right to self-determination. This land is a testament to their shared history and their distinct narratives. It is the canvas of their national aspirations and the battleground of their conflicting claims. Let's delve into the biblical scriptures that add another layer to this intricate issue. The Bible speaks of the Jews' ancient sovereignty over this land, their subsequent captivity, and their yearning to return. These scriptures have been interpreted and reinterpreted over centuries, fueling the claims and counterclaims of this dispute. So we have a small piece of land claimed by two distinct groups, each with a deep-rooted historical, emotional, and religious attachment to it. Each group believes in their right to this land, and each has their narratives, their truths, and their grievances. So how did it all begin? Let's travel back in time to the late 19th century. The late 19th century marked the beginning of Zionism, a movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This was a time when the winds of change were sweeping through Europe. Jews who had faced centuries of persecution were looking for a safe haven. Palestine, the land of their ancestors, seemed like the perfect choice. Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, believed that a Jewish state would not only offer refuge from anti-Semitism, but also provide a cultural and spiritual hub for Jews worldwide. Thus, the late 19th and early 20th centuries saw an influx of Jewish immigrants to Palestine, a region predominantly inhabited by Arab Muslims and Christians. But the seeds of conflict were sown right here. The increasing Jewish immigration, coupled with the purchase of large tracts of land by Jewish settlers, led to growing resentment among the local Arab population. As the demographic balance began to tilt, tensions between the two communities escalated, laying the groundwork for the conflicts that would follow. Then came the Balfour Declaration of 1917. In this letter, the British Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. While the declaration was seen as a massive victory for the Zionist movement, it also added fuel to the simmering tensions between Jews and Arabs. The British Mandate period, from 1920 to 1947, was marked by increased conflicts between Jews and Arabs. The British, who were handed the responsibility of administering Palestine by the League of Nations, found themselves caught in the crossfire. Their attempts at maintaining a delicate balance between the Zionist aspirations and Arab opposition only led to more unrest. As the tensions escalated, the United Nations stepped in with a plan. But as we'll see in the next scene, this plan would lead to a series of events that would forever change the landscape of the Middle East. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan dividing Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. This plan, also known as Resolution 181, sought to address the complex and deep-seated tensions between Jewish immigrants and the Arab population in British Mandatory Palestine. However, the plan was met with outright rejection by Arab nations and Palestinian leaders, who saw it as an infringement upon their rights to self-determination. In response to the rejection of the UN partition plan, on May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, announced the establishment of a new Jewish state, Israel. This unilateral declaration of independence was met with immediate recognition by the United States and the Soviet Union, but also with immediate military action by neighboring Arab states. The First Arab-Israeli War, also known as the War of Independence or the Nakba, broke out the very next day. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq launched a military invasion against Israel, marking the beginning of a bitter and bloody conflict. The war was characterized by fierce battles, significant population displacements, and drastic changes in the map of the region. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the Israeli forces managed to hold their ground and even expand their territories beyond the original partition plan. This war, filled with triumph for some and tragedy for others, reshaped the Middle East and planted the seeds for future conflicts. The war ended in 1949, but it marked only the beginning of a long-standing conflict. Fast forward to 1967, a year that would forever change the landscape of the conflict. Known as the Six-Day War, it witnessed one of the most rapid shifts in territorial control in history. The conflict began when Israel launched preemptive strikes against Egypt, a response to the mobilization of Egyptian forces along the Israeli border. But the war soon expanded, pulling in Jordan and Syria. Within 6 days, Israel seized control of the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. The aftermath of the war saw a significant reshaping of the Middle Eastern map, with Israel's territory more than tripling in size. The occupation of these territories, particularly the West Bank and Gaza Strip, intensified the conflict. An estimated 1 million Palestinians found themselves under Israeli control, and their displacement added fuel to the already simmering tensions. The Six-Day War also attracted increased international attention and involvement. The United Nations passed Resolution 242 calling for Israeli withdrawal from occupied territories and the acknowledgement of every state's right to live in peace, within secure and recognized boundaries. However, the interpretation of this resolution has been a source of contention among the involved parties. The aftermath of the war also saw the rise of Palestinian nationalism and the emergence of groups like the Palestine Liberation Organization, further complicating the dynamics of the conflict. This period marked a turning point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The territorial gains made by Israel in the Six-Day War are still a major point of contention today, with the status of the West Bank and Gaza Strip remaining unresolved. Despite numerous peace attempts, the conflict remains unresolved. Fast forward to today, the conflict continues with both sides asserting their claims. The city of Jerusalem, a sacred ground for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, remains a contested territory, with Israelis and Palestinians both staking their national aspirations on it. Its complex history, spanning over millennia, is marked by conflicts and rivalries, from King David's conquest around 1000 BC to the reign of Herod the Great, the violent Crusades, and the tensions between the Arab and Jewish communities leading up to the creation of the State of Israel. Recently, the city has seen a surge in violence, with clashes erupting at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, considered the most sensitive site in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. At least 152 Palestinians were injured in these clashes, with rubber bullets, stun grenades, and beatings at the hands of the Israeli riot police. This unrest has heightened tensions, posing the risk of a relapse into broader conflict like last year's 11-day war in Gaza. In this volatile situation, international entities like Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations are mediating between the Palestinian factions and Israel to prevent further escalation of violence. Hamas, the largest of the Palestinian factions, has put forward demands that include an end to provocative visits to the Al-Aqsa Mosque by Jewish groups and an end to military incursions into West Bank cities. Meanwhile, the International Committee of the Red Cross has called for a de-escalation of the violence, reminding all involved of the rules of war. They emphasize the prohibition of direct and indiscriminate attacks against civilians and call for the protection of civilians and the safe movement of ambulances and medical staff. Yet despite these efforts, peace remains elusive. The ongoing conflict has left a trail of destruction and human suffering in its wake. The question of who truly owns Jerusalem is as contentious as ever, with both Israelis and Palestinians laying claim to the city as their capital. Will there ever be a peace treaty? And who really benefits from this war? These are questions that continue to haunt the region and the world. The Israel-Palestine conflict is more than just a territorial dispute. It's a testament to the human struggle for identity and self-determination. As we journeyed through the labyrinth of history, we untangled the threads of the late 19th century origins, the UN partition plan, the first Arab-Israeli war, and the reverberating aftermath of the Six-Day War. We've peered into the current state of affairs, a tapestry of tensions and hope woven with the threads of past events. Understanding this history is not just an academic exercise, it is crucial if we are to comprehend the present, to see beyond the headlines and the political rhetoric. It is through this understanding that we can begin to envision a better future, one where the rights and aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians are respected. The road to peace may be long, strewn with obstacles, but it is a road that must be walked. The stakes are too high, the cost of continued conflict too great. As we look ahead, we remain hopeful for a peaceful resolution that respects the rights and aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians. Because at the end of the day, we all share one common home, Earth.